So I'm happy I made the phone call to you yesterday.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Well, before we go anywhere, if anyone's watching the full show, we'll just a quick go around. Jason, tell us who you are, what you do, and what you're looking for.
Sure. Yeah, Jason Marcordes. I own Landmark Property Management. We manage residential properties in and around the Chicagoland area
All
for
right,
about
Tim,
500
give your
units.
elevator.
Tim Harstead, owner operator of Chicago Style Management. We operate primarily on the south side, southeast suburbs of Chicago, and are helping investors be able to be profitable and stress free while investing in the C and D class areas of Chicagoland.
All
It's a
right,
tough thing to
and
do.
Mark Ainley, GC Realty, owner, partner, founder. We cover a lot of area, northwest suburbs. We're actually going all the way up to Wisconsin now these days. So we're excited about expanding coverage into areas that don't have what we're going to talk about today, rental licenses for the most part. So it's kind of crazy. I don't know if you guys realize this, but the rental license really started in like these bigger cities, these Elgin, Joliet, and it was kind of on the heels of the crime-free housing when the town started to participate in crime-free housing program. And the next step was like, hey, well, why don't we start inspecting as well too? And it happened. The rental license started happening in these larger cities like Elgin or Joliet because they had subpar conditions, or they had 5 or 6 families living in a house, or they had cellars with people sleeping in it, just unsanitary, just rough conditions where if there's a fire, God forbid, like a dozen people could die. Like so, that's really where that was started. And I remember back in the day when I first got into this game, 2003. The goal was to see how long it could go without having to get the rental license. I don't know if you guys ever did that in your side business, but now like we're totally above board. And I mean, don't get me wrong, for like the last 15 years we've been above board. But back then it was like, hey, we'll worry about that when we get to it. Don't worry about it right now. What's your guys' experience with rental license? I know, Jason, you're from the south suburbs, so you've had to deal a lot with that.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it is a real challenge, especially in the south suburbs. Just like it seems like every municipality has a different process, um, you know, different due dates, different applications. It's a bit of a nightmare. And we manage in like half the municipalities have them, the other half don't. And it's just a world of difference. Like it's amazing to manage in places that do not require rental licenses.
Do you, as an investor, because you're an investor as well too, we're all investors on here. Do you utilize that? Do you think about that when you're looking at properties to buy or you've bought in the past?
I don't. I should. In fact, one of the stories that comes to mind. I know I'm getting ahead of the ball here, but I just got a $1,500 fine from a Six Flat I own in Moni because we failed to renew the license, and it was just something simple. They didn't have the right mailing address, so at the end of the day, it falls on us anyways. But no, I don't take that into account. And again, after that, I'm like, shoot, maybe I should. That's a lot of money. So
What about you, Tim?
I think it's I think a few years ago, not as much. I think if I was buying, and I'll throw this out there. There's been rumblings and talks about Chicago might go that route, and other towns that aren't there might. So I don't know if you can escape it, but there's more and more of these villages that aren't doing it just for the reasoning that we talked about to begin with. Like 10 years ago, when a lot of this started, South Holland and these other areas in the south suburbs, they were truly looking out for the tenants and truly looking out for the neighborhoods. And I think some of these neighborhoods like Markham we've talked about, Orland Park's a big one. They're really more so just becoming anti-renters
right.
and not wanting renters there. So they're making it. I mean, some of the stuff that we get on these inspections for our clients has just been. It's just crazy. We failed. We had a guy that just bought a property. It was occupied already in Markham, and it failed because the tenant had laundry on the floor, so they wouldn't issue the license.
That's funny.
I haven't heard Orland Park being an issue. What's about Orland Park that you're running into there?
That's new.
You guys both seem to agree to that. What do you guys know
Yeah,
that?
it's you might know a little more than I do, Jason, because I know you. you're in the area a little bit, but
Uh, I don't. You know more than I do. I will tell you
that's
that
fine.
they just instituted a rental license cap. And that
Yeah.
is one of the big problem that Orland Park has now because um, even existing rentals, they're like non-renewing. So if you have an occupied rental and they don't have availability or available rental license for that block, like they're making you non-renew that tenant and have them move out. So they have, they went from like one end of the spectrum to the complete opposite end where they were relatively easy to deal with, and now it's just like a complete nightmare.
We'll go
Yeah.
back to the cap and moratorium then in a bit. But for those that don't know this, the rental license is basically it's not in the city of Chicago, and I got a question about that or for you guys' opinion on that. But it is in, I believe, 82 of like the 128 suburbs throughout Cook, Kane, Kendall, and DuPage and McHenry, so the 6 counties. And basically what it requires is you to pay a fee to the city on an annual basis, and that fee is pretty nominal. If all you had to pay is a fee 75, 110, we get taxed a million different ways, like that probably would not be the end of the world. But the bigger thing is they come out and they inspect, and when they inspect, I think you run into one or two sides of the coin. Is either it's pretty standard, they follow what's on their website, and they have you know kind of life safety items bullet pointed, 10, 12 things they really look for, and they pass you. Or it becomes very, you don't know who's going to show up or what type of list they're looking for that day. And even sometimes you might fail, go fix that, and then come back a second time, and they find new things, so you have to come back a third time. So the inconsistencies where it could become a real strain on property managers and landlords. I know for us, we've been hired as a property manager before just so people don't have to deal with the city anymore, or they got a bad argument with the city, and now they're going to fail unless they bring someone to at least represent them better than they're representing themselves. So that was kind of a summary. It's something that this did not exist 25 years ago, and this is a way. Cities look at it one or two ways. Either A, it's a pain, we're not going to deal with it, the ones that don't, or B, they look at it as like, hey, we can generate some revenue and keep some control over the housing stock in our neighborhoods. So you could probably argue it either way, but did I kind of summarize that clean enough for anyone listening or that's not sure what we're talking about?
Yeah, I
No,
think that was
I think
a
it's
pretty good summary. One thing I will note: not every village that has a rental license has an inspection as well. And back to the original question you asked me about, choosing places to invest. I wouldn't necessarily choose. I, I guess one thing I will say is there's definitely municipalities that I have scratched off the list because of their inspection process. I don't know if can we mention like places?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay.
Because
So
I think
like,
what we're talking about, who's listening to us right now are people that are investors and people that might be concerned about their portfolio.
Gotcha.
Or
so
yeah,
like
sure.
one of them for me, like Country Club. Like I won't do Country Club Hills. Their process is much like CHA's, where they'll come through, they'll do an inspection, and you could have painted and it could have looked beautiful last year, but because the tenant came in, they tore it up. It's on you as the landlord to repair that, and that'll crush your investment. It's hard to make money when it's so tenant friendly and everything is the landlord's fault.
Part of country clubs, we'll dive into specific country club bills. I'll agree with you. We stopped taking stuff on there as well too because they limit you to, for a property manager or an investor, you can only have 10. You have to have an individual that's responsible for no more than 10 properties. That individual is the person that's actually go take the class. You're required, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, you're required to provide the landscaping and snowplow, even though, single family housing, one of the benefits is you can put that in the tenant. You're required as the property manager to say that you're doing that. And they very not user friendly when it comes to dealing with their city. I don't know. I don't think there's a city in South Suburbs I've had to visit their village hall more than Country Club Hills.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this way too. It's not necessarily the law, but it's the way when you go. To your point, a lot of these places you can't just call and get this done. You have to walk in and get the work done or get the paperwork in. And there's different villages that will get that. Some just want good people living there that they're all good with it, and you can tell they're open to rentals. and others you can tell they want to just make you jump through hoop after hoop after hoop. Country Club Hills one, Markham we talked about a lot. There's they just want to make it hard and they don't want renters there, and that's when I think I look away from buying in those areas. Like I don't if the hoops are set in stone and they've been that way for 10, 20 years and you can give me a list of do this, this, and this, and then we'll pass you, I'm fine with it. But I think some of these villages make up rules as they go along because they just don't want the renters there. They're going to make you jump through so many hoops that eventually you give up.
The South Suburbs, it turns into being a tough way to make money because South Suburbs, you're already dealing with higher property taxes. You know, if you got $5,000 to $9,000 taxes on a $200,000 home, you might have a Section 8 tenant. Your chance you have a Section 8 tenant or a Cook County one is pretty high in these areas, mostly because they actually offer a little more rent than market rent. So now you're dealing with those hoops to jump through. And then you have the rental license. So it feels like every other month you have an inspection or you have some sort of compliance that you have to meet, which all costs money. Just to send somebody out there to meet them is either your time or you're paying somebody to go out there and meet them, which it's usually not a 5-minute window either. So it's usually like a 2-hour window. So it gets complicated. And then you start talking about these fines with some of these as well too. They're pretty hefty fines if you are not compliant, even if it's accidental. I know for us, we've taken over from many property managers in the South Suburbs where it's like, the other property manager got fired because they had $2,200 in fines 3 times in a row or something like that, like some crazy thing just because the compliance was not there.
Yeah, it's tough. In a lot of these municipalities, like you're getting beat up from multiple angles, and it's tough to project that as an investor and like have that on the pro forma. But at the end of the day, it is reality. And when you start adding up the numbers, it's really hard to make these investments work.
I always tell people, they're like, in South Suburbs, which is the best? I said, Homewood and Flossmoor.
Yeah.
You pay more for taxes, but it's worth not dealing with the rental license. So anyone listening, there's no rental license in those towns. Which South Suburbs, while we're talking about South Suburbs right now, which ones would you say are more user-friendly or more investor-friendly than we've bashed a couple? Like, what would you guys think experiences?
Lately I've been a big fan of Dalton. It's not super hard to get the license, and you still have to go through the process, etc. But also just what you could buy a house for and what it rents for. The spread is big enough for the headache.
I did not think I'd hear that today. Dalton is a shocker to me.
Do you experience the difference?
Well, we don't really invest, or we don't really manage there anymore, but it has just been a complete disaster the last couple of years. And I've probably managed at least 500 homes in Dalton over the course of, back in the Mac days, we had probably 1,000 in Dalton. Maybe not quite 1,000, but it's just a disaster. And have you had issues with the water bills? Them not like turning off the water when the tenant's $500 behind or $1,000 behind? The tenant moves out, and all of a sudden you have a $2,000 water bill.
Yeah, but I'm used to Chicago, where that's like the norm. So like in comparativeness, like you can't even get the water bill changed over in Chicago. And it's
You can
always
get it
left
added to
with
your
you.
portal though.
You can get them added, but like you're never gonna get, like if the tenant moves out and owes 20 grand for their water bill in Chicago, you owe it. So it almost becomes.
So Calumet City and Chicago Heights has specifically told us that they're hesitant to turn off the water because their records of what water mains from the street go to what properties is so off, or they're afraid something's going to break. Like both cities have said, I paraphrase to tell the story, but they've both said some format for each one of those. And especially if you're getting into townhouses or the multifamily that are individually metered, like, yes, that is literally the problem that you face, or that's their decision-making process. Rightfully so. That is a business decision on their side. But that ultimately is something that then us or everyone watching this has to deal with here. Dalton,
I would echo your response, Mark. I'm a big HF guy. They have a phenomenal school system there. So Homeland and Flossmoor, my favorites. I do like that little pocket of Chicago Heights that goes to HF. You get really good rents, you get good tenant quality, but a little bit of a better price. And then I know Lansing does not have a rental license inspection. So,
Well, I'll tell you this. I was going to reference this, and you beat me to it. Chicago Heights, yes, people I would say do it on the north side and the Homewood Flossmoor School District. And I'll tell you this: our rental inspection experience from the north side of Chicago Heights to the south side is night and day.
Really?
South side, we've managed smaller apartments, $8,000-9,000 apartments, the traditional '60s yellow 6 flats, stuff like that. Yeah, they manage things totally different on the south part versus the north part. And the north part ends up being a lot more single family homes and higher rents and all that stuff. And I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it, but it does. And while we're talking about that, Aurora is the same way. Elgin is the same way, where it's like down by the river on the east side of those towns. There is definitely they're a little more picky on what you're doing versus out against Route 59 or Randall Road, where it's newer construction, and it is definitely night and day, the experience that you have with some of the, I guess, call it lower rents versus higher rents with these cities. I'm not sure if it's intentional.
yeah, I was going to say, is that like different standards or different inspector in that area, or?
No, I mean, so here's the thing. The reality of it is it's lower rent, so things are beat up a little more. Neighborhoods are a little rougher, and then at the same time, the housing stock is older. So the stuff down by the river, it's never new construction for the most part. But the stuff out in 59 or out Randall Road and all that, this stuff's all 20, 30 years old at most, at max. So I think, but you run into it. But it's similar with Chicago Heights, where that's all single family homes built in the 60s, 70s up north. And then the south stuff is all mostly multifamily housing stock or older single families.
Right. Makes
So
sense.
I'll throw. We were talking about the south side and everything, but I'll throw it back to you, Mark, with this. Like, I know you guys do a lot more northwest of the city, or just west of the city than we do. We've been bashing sort of the south side stuff, and we should for how they are. But how are other suburbs? Can we run away and go northwest and be saved, or is there anything better that way?
So I've been trying to buy Class A single family homes in these northwest suburbs, and I will still try to avoid the rental license if I can in certain cities. Some cities like Glendale Heights, it's just like $300, like $325 for a year. Like that's still pretty nominal, but if you only have a $13 or $14 rent, it's a lot bigger than if you got a single family. So, but they're not as bad inspection wise. For us out here in the northwest suburbs, we've gotten to know a lot of the inspectors. They've been very tenured. But you run the thing that they started doing the last couple of years in certain suburbs like Hoffman Estates, Streamwood, Schaumburg. If they come in and they're like, oh, that copper on that hot water heater looks new and it doesn't, I don't think we got any record of any permits on this. Bam, they're gonna say you need to get a permit. So you now have to pay a licensed plumber to go look at it, get an official permit pulled. So it usually costs you $350 to hire a professional to go do that. So they're doing that now. The other thing is you run into, and I was going to quote this about Dalton as well too. Dalton, a lot of the things when you fail, they're like, we need a licensed so-and-so to get this done. So you can't send handyman Xavier over there anymore. You're now sending licensed plumber Joe. So that ends up costing more money in a place like Dalton. But they're doing that now in the suburbs as well too. So they're big on GFCIs out here. The new code for GFCIs, and this is something that passed this year too. This is something that maybe you guys don't know, but I learned a couple weeks ago. Is the code used to be GFCIs has to be so many feet of water. We all know that, like kitchens, laundry rooms. They've now expanded that to garages. It used to be suggested for garages, but now it's actually law to be in garages as well too. So, but they'll come out, and most of these cities will bust you for that, but they make you get a permit to have an electrician go pull that. So. We always try to get ahead of it. It's like just change them all, and just worst case scenario they don't say anything, but or best case scenario they don't say anything. Worst case scenario you don't have to deal with this and pay 20-30% higher because of time, permitting, and all that type of stuff. The other thing about the suburbs is it's very sporadic. We kind of just joked like Homewood, Flossmoor, like those are two islands in a sea of rental license communities. Like everything, Riverdale, like everything down there has rental license for the most part. Like Burnham is like, that's a small one. They don't have it down there, but no one really talks about Burnham ever. But when you get out here, it ends up just being hit or miss. And it's just not easier to do business in those places. You take a single family home in a town like, trying to think of one that's good, but off the top of my head. As a lot more have, like Bloomingdale just added it. Bloomingdale put it in their code 3 years ago, but then they finally just called us up this year and said, "Hey, you got to start doing it." Like we tried getting a license and they went less. But I try to think of like Lombard and Wheaton and Downers Grove and Naperville, like all those along that corridor do not require it. And then when you get up north, when you start getting into Barrington and Inverness and Lake Zurich, and you get take Route 14 up there, like none of them have it, and it's beautiful. So the ease of doing business, whether it be from an investor or a property manager standpoint, gets a lot easier. Now Schaumburg, the cool thing about Schaumburg is you got to pay the fee for everything, but they only require inspections for single family homes. So if you have a townhouse condo, you just pay the fee. So you at least get to skip the rigmarole of dealing with that stuff.
Yeah, we have a few down by us. New Lenox, Frankfurt, Mokina, I think, doesn't have a rental license or rental inspection. So much, much easier to deal with those municipalities for sure.
Now you have some towns like Addison. Addison literally, starting back when they used to go on Craigslist, how I used to get busted, was they go on Craigslist and see they're renting a place, and then so we're going way back with Craigslist, and then they call you out. But now they still go on Zillow and they go in places and they look for landlords that are not in the rental license program, and they bust them. So, but I'll tell you one thing: the fines out here in the northwest suburbs are far less than stuff in the south suburbs. We manage stuff in both, but like the risk is far more in the south suburbs.
That's the ridiculous thing of the south, of some of these areas of the south suburbs, is like just the fines. Like you get weeds, you have to cut them. Cool, $2,000, 25. Like some of the stuff we got. One of the weirder tickets. Our tenant had someone pull up in an RV for an hour, and they wrote $1,000 fine. Like, and then the other one that's crazy with Markham that they started doing last year was if your tenant gets a speeding ticket in Markham, if it's not paid for, if the tenant doesn't pay it, you can't renew your license until the landlord pays the speeding ticket.
Markham also has, I've gotten the ticket for if your contractor shows up and he's not licensed, the owner gets a ticket and the contractor gets licensed. When I say licensed, I mean like they're not bonded or fully like enrolled with the city as a licensed vendor to do business in the city. Like vendor gets it, and then you as the owner gets it.
That makes I can see that making a little more sense because you're the one that called the vendor, but a speeding ticket, that's insane. That makes no sense. Like, how is that my fault?
Right.
I will say, we've had some pretty good success, like going to court and fighting these or just providing pictures that, hey, the work's been done. And for the most part, we've had a lot of success in getting those fines either reduced or waived. So I don't know if you guys have seen that as well.
It just depends on the village.
Yeah.
I again, going back to what I was saying earlier, I don't necessarily care as much about what the rules are. I care about how they treat them. And I think some villages, they just want you to cut the grass. The fine is literally to make you cut the grass, whereas there's other villages where the fine is they need tax money.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get as much as possible. They're not going to reduce it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You know what's crazy about some of them? I know one specifically, Glenwood. One of the requirements for multifamily is you have to make sure that they request a copy of your boiler boiler inspection sheet. So you know how every year the boiler inspector comes out, he inspects the boiler, he gives you that little sheet. If you don't have that displayed, that's a big fine in Glenwood specifically. We used to manage a couple of those 6-flats. One was actually for Tom, and it was. He got busted for that one, but that was one that we actually were able to show up, bring it to court. So this is a good thing about knowing people. You realize there's only 2 boiler inspectors in the entire state of Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Oh,
Yeah. So the one's been doing it for us for a long time, and I became good friends with him. Like, he's got like lockbox to all of our buildings and stuff like that. So he called the city, helped me out with that. But that's something that Glenwood specifically ties into it. That's crazy. We talked a little bit about caps and moratoriums. What do you guys want to just explain kind of what those each are so people are clear on that?
Yeah, so a couple different things. Some of these villages have put in place moratoriums, meaning that they're not going to release any new licenses for anyone in the near future, or at least like depending on the village, it's going to be a different time period that they don't want to release new licenses for. And then others have created a cap, which I guess the closest thing is, think of HOAs in the city. There's some buildings where they have rental caps. If there's 100 units in the building, only 10 of them can be rented. Different villages are starting to do that, where whether it be we're only going to let 20% of 20% of our housing stock be rentals, or some are doing it even where it's block by block, and like on this block you can rent out 3 houses, but that's it. In the next block you can rent out 3 houses. So those are the basis of it. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jason.
No, that's perfect. I was just going to ask, like, as far as the moratorium, like for me, the first couple that come to mind, South Holland and Country Club Hills. Who else is doing moratoriums right now?
Markham's the other big one that I know has a full moratorium on it.
And then what about rental caps? Obviously, Orland Park, we already covered that.
That's
Yeah,
a
I don't
big
know.
one.
Country Club Hills, or I mean South Holland. That was kind of what their thing was, like to get it underneath
They both started out. South Holland and Country Club Hills both started out as caps, and then eventually put a moratorium as the cap wasn't slowing it down enough or whatever they were looking for. But I think the only active one that I can think of in the South is Orland.
Gotcha.
You said something about this early on, so I'm curious if you've heard stuff. The Chicago, like, have you heard like they could potentially put a rental license in place in the past?
Mm-hmm. They're looking at it. It's they're talking about it in city council meetings. There's a lot of right now, and we don't have to go into it fully because it could be a whole other steering to a whole different conversation. But both the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago have a lot of crazy laws that they're discussing that could really hurt, for the most part, hurt landlords. There are a few that will help, like the squatters and stuff like that. They're trying to create laws that will actually let us get squatters out with police. So there's a few good ones and a lot of bad ones that are on the table that hopefully don't get voted through.
Well, it's okay if we take a sidebar here. Like the one was up yesterday for vote. I can't figure out if it passed or not when you look at the website. Like, do you know anything about that?
Which one are you talking about?
This is the one where they're going to cap the late fees at like 1%, $10, 1%, something like that. They're going to cap the application fees to $10. I'm sorry, $20 per application, and then they're going to get rid of non-refundable movement fees, which would force, like, that one would change everything in Chicago, right? Like, that'd be crazy. And I'm not sure how fast it would go into place, but it was up for vote yesterday, and I even ISB back, I can't figure out if anything. It says like amended.
Yeah, I thought so last I heard was that they were supposed to put a different law forward to replace it.
Yeah, see, that's what it kind of looked like. That's how it kind of read.
So and that law, did you read it at all? The one that they wanted to replace it with. Move-in fees move-in fees were back in. They took that part out, but they got rid of pet fees. Lease renewal fees became illegal. What was the other one? There was a couple more. An agent or a tenant isn't allowed to pay I'll call it a buyer's agent for lack of a better term, but a renter's agent, which is really weird because didn't Illinois just pass a law in November that made it illegal for a renter's agent to get paid by the landlord to sort of correspond with the NAR thing?
Yeah.
So this would make it, I guess, that just renters can never have representation, which doesn't make sense. Yeah, so those are the main ones that were on the new.
So you said lease renewal fee. You said the
lease renewal fee, pet fees.
The commission.
Actually, I have a screenshot of it.
Wow. So let me ask this question then. It went through. It was the original passed the House, and then it went to the Senate yesterday. So the Senate just said, let's scrap this one, let's put this one in. So will they pass that? Then it has to go back to the Senate. Like, how does that work? How does a bill become a law, Tim?
Real quick, like who's pushing this? Is this like a Brandon Johnson thing, or is this like tenants' rights groups, or
This is all
like
state
who's
level, so it's
backing
all
this
tenant
bill?
rights groups. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's tenant rights groups.
unbelievable. It's extremely
Uh,
frustrating. It makes our job really, really hard.
What makes investors
yeah,
want to not invest here?
Yeah.
so no fee can be paid to a broker from a tenant. No, all fees must be on the first page of a lease. Um,
I could live with that.
yeah, that one I actually understand. I actually like that. Um,
It helps us stay organized too.
yeah, late fee cannot exceed $25 and cannot be charged until they're past 7 days late. Which Chicago already has 5 days, so I guess that's not a, too big of a difference. Uh, no administration fee for renewal of lease. No administration fee for changes in the lease or modification of lease. Uh, no fees for pet occupancy. No fees for eviction or any penalties of the. Yeah, is that what it says? Tenant fee per penalty for an eviction notice or eviction action. So you
No
can't
fee.
charge
You
them
can't
for.
charge them for anything.
Yeah,
Can we still
basically.
collect rent, Tim?
Yeah. All right, that's great. So nothing passed then. We're safe for now, at least. At least it's kind of
Oh,
got.
yeah, I haven't heard anything.
Gotcha. So, but Chicago do rental license. Back on that topic, like I cannot see, like the manpower like to do that.
Yeah,
Like
I was just gonna
you
say,
realize they're like
they-
3 years behind on elevator certificates.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Well, that's the problem with a lot of this is like, how is any of it going to be monitored? Like, even if they passed it, like, they don't have the ability to. I think you're going to see courts 100 different security deposit cases every day in the court system.
I think it ends up just being then the penalties how they put that in place, like they do, like if it ends up being just this X amount of times security deposit plus attorney fees, and that's the goal is just to get it into court and you automatically lose. That's how it works for Chicago and now Cook County. But I'm not hearing too much stuff about Cook County, so that's good that attorneys aren't really pushing that yet.
well,
But
if it passes in Chicago, it usually goes to Cook County at some point.
yeah, so I don't know, I'm curious to see who will be the next mayor coming up here. So we'll see. Maybe Julius will do something cooler than what this guy's doing if he could get in. But cool. As far as rental license goes, talk to us from a property manager standpoint. Like, what should investors know? What should they think about from the beginning? We already talked about should you buy there. We kind of talked about the warnings, or maybe we talked about some cities to look into. But as far as you bought a place, you have it. You do the paperwork right away, get it in there. You got to go do an inspection. Is there anything you guys recommend around inspections? And like, do you do work beforehand? Do you wait to see what you failed for? Do you give me some kind of your guys' process or how you guys look at the overall approach?
Tim, let's hear the secret sauce.
So for us, we're gonna get it. So we'll always tell our clients, look, we're gonna turn it to where we're happy with it and where a tenant's gonna rent it and want to be. But I can almost guarantee we fail for something. The problem is, I could fix 1,000 little things, and they'll still try to find something. So we're gonna make it presentable, livable, and where we would want to live there, and where we would take possession of it. And then we just sort of warn that we don't know what's going to come up. There's nothing super obvious, but odds are they'll find something. And then sort of just let it go, and then see what we fail for and fix that.
Yeah. We take a similar approach, and we have a pretty robust internal inspection, like 9-page checklist we go through. We have a pretty good success rate there. But on the renewal side, we do not go in proactively creating a checklist and start fixing things. We take the approach that we don't want to spend money that may not be an issue. So we'll get the checklist from the municipality, and then we'll work off that. I know not everybody takes that approach. I know Jared proactively goes in there and starts fixing things, and he's had some good success with that. So I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
So we do a pre-walk. We put together a web form. We'll do a pre-walk, and we took these standards. We feel Elgin is the most, call it sophisticated, extensive. So we kind of will look at that, and then we'll look at each individual city based on their smoke alarm codes. Because some Hoffman Estates requires you have in every bedroom, but and Palatine does as well too. But Rolling Meadows, you just need it 15 feet from whatever burning fossil fuel appliances. So and then we'll do any of the work that typically has to be done off that list, so we could, with the goal of passing the first time. So we've taken a different approach. It costs a couple more bucks up front, but ultimately we're gonna have to go back the second time, and then it keeps us in good graces with the city for the most part. That's how we've approached it for the last couple of years. We ran some issues. We've kind of put this in place with some issues we had down in Salt Village. You guys got to have a story about Salt Village. Like we messed up down there big time with them, and it was to the point where it's like, man, we can't even manage this town anymore, because if we got to deal with that guy, like he's never gonna let us off the hook again. Like so, so we kind of put that process in place with the goal of kind of first time pass, and I think we're in the between the 50s and low 70s at any given time for first pass. So we have a kind of a similar process for CHA too, which we talked about in the last episode. But the rental license is something we try to get out in front of.
I don't have any good Sauk Village stories personally, but I do know that, and I don't know how long ago you were dealing with that guy, but IAR and another realtor filed suit against them because they were not using the inspector that their law said they should. So they won that lawsuit, and now it has to be the fire chief that does the inspections. And I guess he's a lot better at them and more forgiving than the people that were doing it a couple years ago. So
all right, we'll go back to Sauk. We're good.
It's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. We don't manage there, so I don't have any Sauk Village stories for you.
Sauk Village, like it's such there's so much good deals on paper, I guess. Like, but there's just nothing to that town. Same with like University Park. University Park's got at least the university there, but like when you get away from the university, which is kind of way off from like the downtown area where all the housing's at, but like there's just not much going on there retail wise or anything like that.
I think what you said is that's the toughest part. On paper, it looks like a deal, but in reality, like all these little things add up, and that profit margin gets eaten away pretty quickly.
Well, it's also, so here's another tip for anyone that's going to be managing or investing there is, it's not turnkey then at that point. So even, for us, if somebody hires us to manage something, any of us on this call, in any of these south suburbs that we're talking about, it then becomes additional conversations we have to have with the client. Hey, listen, we went out to the inspection. We want to make sure we do this stuff beforehand, because if we don't, we got to get a permit. Or, hey, we went out there and, hey, man, you got a hot water heater before now we have to go back and get a permit. Or it's like, hey, we went out there again and they found something new. Like, so the whole, even if you have a proper manager, it still ends up not being as smooth. you might end up getting your 8-9% return, but man, it's a hard earned 8-9%. It's a lot more stressful than maybe the 5 or 6% return you might get in a more conservative area.
It's almost like, and I think we touched base on this last time we were on about CHA. A lot of times people think there's this magic button that we can push, and it's like, with CHA, you can't take this long to get approval, or maybe you're doing something wrong. It's like, no, this is the process, and the same thing with a lot of these villages. Like, it's almost impossible sometimes to get it right, because there's things, well, I guess I shouldn't say it's impossible, but you could spend a whole lot of money that you don't have to spend and get it right the first time, or you can just like fail and get the list and then fix what needs to be fixed, because they're pulling from such a vast and long list that, and here's even the funnier thing is, in a lot of these villages they have point of sale inspections too, and they don't correlate. So you can get occupancy, you can own the building and live there per the city, but then once you decide to rent it out, you now have to fix more things. So that part's, I don't know, always confused me too, or I've always laughed at that how are they two different inspections?
Yeah, and some of them don't even, I know some of these suburbs, you might get the point of sale inspection, and they still make you go through and do a whole rental license inspection, and like that's just it's crazy. The thing about it, as a buyer, and this is another thing I'll recommend any buyers. A lot of times they're like, oh yeah, I'll take the house subject to the 3 or 4 things that have to be done for the rental license, and we'll do that after we close. It's like, yeah, but now the city's coming back out. Now that 3 or 4 things, they're gonna find other things. I always tell buyers, like, listen, man, if it costs you $1,000 more, that you gotta have you credit the buyer back to handle these things, or you delay the closing by 3 weeks, and you got to pay an extra extension for your mortgage, whatever. Like, do it, because take the property with everything buttoned up so the city doesn't have to come back in for X amount of months, or this is kind of a closed and shut. You got it done, you got the certificate, and you're done. Because that is a stone that stays overturned and can get thrown. It throws you off your path after you buy a property. Also, now they come back, and we had this happen in Hazel Crest. There's 2 or 3 items on that list at point of sale that the buyer inherited. Buyer's like, no problem, I'll do it. We even helped him get pricing for it. We did it, and then the guy came out. He's like, nah, but this driveway's cracked, so he had to pay another $7,000 to replace the concrete in this large section of the driveway. So it's like, and there's nothing to do. We're like, can we do asphalt? Like, we're trying to figure out any way we could, but one, it would look stupid, but 2, that they're like, no, it has to match what was there. Like, that's just a fucking made up rule, right? At that point, like there's no way. It's like, when you gotta argue with them, like, there's nowhere that says like that's got to match. Like, so that's another pain point that with rental licenses. I'm gonna put in the comment section. We made a list of all every city, if they have point of sale inspections or if they have rental license inspections, that anyone could look at as well too. It's as of a couple years ago, but it's still pretty accurate for the most part. Anything else we want to hammer home? So rental license, otherwise though, anything else good, bad, and different you guys want to bring up here?
I don't. You want to go off subject completely? We got one question on Facebook.
Yeah, for sure. Go.
Someone's asking about how does CHA determine their fair market rent prices? It feels like a black box. I think you actually just described how they figure it out.
Hit the nail on the head.
So, yeah, we've been told, at least from my point of view, and then, we'll see if you guys have anything different. But at one point, I've been told that it's off of Go Section 8 rentals, the website, and when people put that's what they're using as comps. And then I've also been told by them that they can't use CHA rentals as comps for market rent. So they can only use comps that they find. So it's completely up in the air of where they're getting the numbers from. I don't know if you guys have heard anything else or differently.
Still a mystery to me. We don't manage a ton of CHA anymore, but yeah, I've never been able to figure it out. So
that's why we're so big on when you go to rent to somebody to get their their rental burden sheet. That way we can at least see what they qualify from, back off the utilities, and that's kind of the number that you can at least know you're going to get, even though you're going to go wait through the whole process. But here's the thing, I think you guys would agree, HACC sent out their letter of all the changes they're going to start making around pricing, and I imagine every housing authority across the country is doing similar things with reduced funding, and just CHA and DHA and all them are just behind. So there's going to be some changes, I think, in all of that soon. And I think in that letter, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, HAC specifically said, like, we're not going to be as aggressive on increasing prices anymore. Like, I think they pretty much said that. Yeah. So it's like the chance of you getting approved for an increase is pretty slim to none. Which
they basically backdated it to 2024 pricing standards. So if you got your increase to the max last year, odds are you're not getting anything this year.
Which is crazy because, and it's funny how we go through cycles of this, because between 2008 and 12, or 2008 maybe 13, that 5-year period, we never even wasted our time applying for increases. If we wanted a higher rent, we just kicked them out because they were not handing them out at all that time. Where it actually, we probably went a couple more years not doing it, and then we were like, oh shit, we got to start doing this because we're hearing other people get them, and ultimately it's been part of our process, our renewal process every year now. But I think we're going to probably end up in this other kind of few year span where it's just like it might not be worth doing the paperwork and making the labor to go and try to get it.
I'll say 2 things to that. One is that so they specifically said in that letter from HACC that if you were around in 2017, it's going to be similar. So like they literally are pointing out that it's going to be, because I feel like there was a few year gap after, like you said, 2012 or whatever, and then it worked again, and then it slowed down again, and then all of a sudden the prices got super high. But also, what's crazy to me about a lot of this stuff is like they won't give you a rent increase, but if you kick the tenant out, find another tenant with the same voucher, all of a sudden, Like you just displaced the family because you didn't want to keep up with the taxes. And you know, as landlords, that's a huge thing, is just trying to keep up with some of these tax increases. Um, it's not a lot of the increases that we do aren't because we want to make more money every year. It's because we're trying to keep up with the increases in taxes and things like that. But it's just funny that that's the part they don't think about. So now I'm going to non-renew this person. They're going to have to go find another home. You're going to pay more at their new home, and then when I find a new person, you're going to pay me more, and the money's coming from the same spot.
The other risk that you had 10 years ago, which could be similar to what might happen here in the upcoming years, is you could apply for an increase and get a decrease. Mm-hmm. That was a thing back in the day. So that was all the more reason for whether it been my own properties or our clients' properties. It was like, yeah, this could happen. They're like, yeah, don't even waste time. Like, all you had to say was that, and everyone was kind of like, okay, we'll probably leave. So
the other thing is like the last few years have been pretty good in the rental market. Like our rents are up significantly. So, you know, real estate in general is cyclical, and it doesn't surprise me they're putting a pause. I mean, obviously it's more part of the broader, political scene, but it doesn't surprise me that at some point they put a pause on that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we wrapped about rental license, good, bad, and different. I guess the overarching theme is just know where you're buying and make sure you follow it to the T. Otherwise, you'll get fined, or you just make your life more difficult, or you'll get bad graces with the city. So, any closing thoughts on rental license?
No, like you said, just know what you're getting into, and then follow the process to the T. If you want detailed instructions, you know, obviously every municipality is different, so just call the village directly. The other thing we didn't talk about is, ask about their crime-free policy. A lot of them require classes and additional paperwork.
Yeah, that's true. You want to Shay wrote in there, where do you guys think is an underlooked place to invest in the city right now? Where do you guys see the path of development? Jason, it's specific, you're calling out Jason specifically.
I mean, I don't have any secrets. I mean, I still like Pilsen. I still think Pilsen, there's a lot of room to run there. I still like Little Village. I like Albany Park. Some parts of Bronzeville. What do you guys think?
I guess that's from Jason Hamill? No.
I don't know.
I don't know.
What do you think, Tim?
So I think I like a year ago I'd say Woodlawn's still there. That's starting to become not way overpriced, but starting to become where it's priced appropriately, and the prices are getting there. So sort of moving the next area over, and into South Shore. Those areas I see as they're going to start to accelerate more and more in that side. So that'd probably be my spot in the city.
All right. So my answer is don't chase the path of progress and go where the opportunity is at. Sometimes where the opportunity is at, that turns into the path of progress. No one knew 15, 16 years ago that Wicker Park, Bucktown would be what it is today, Ukrainian Village, or call it maybe 20 years ago at this point. And no one would have thought 10 years ago that they'd be building brand new construction on the 6700 block of Evans in West Woodlawn. Like, so these are things that I remember we had our office on 63rd and Eberhard, and it was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like now there's new construction where our office used to be. So I think you have to keep right now inventory is tight, so you got to go where there is opportunities. I think when you're looking to the city, you're going to look through major corridors and access and shopping and neighborhood and parks and all that stuff. And in the suburbs, you're going to look at access to the highways. You're going to look at the school districts are probably more important in suburbs. So I think, and that's age-old information. Like that's what people have been banking on for hundreds of years when it comes to real estate. So keep to the basics and don't try to guess. And I think that's always your best option.
One more quick note here is, that's a personal thing, and it really depends on your risk tolerance and the headaches that you're willing to endure. And like, how long are we talking? Like, is this a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year investment? People talk about like West Humboldt, for example, and it's like, yeah, that may pop, and parts of it are already popping maybe, but man, it could be another 10 or 15 or 20 years, and that's a lot of evictions. It's a lot of whatever you have to deal with in between now and then. So
Yeah, that's for sure. And I put in there, I mind dumped into a quick little download of where on the suburb side of things of where I think, and it talks a lot about rental license as well too, of where to avoid and so forth. So you guys can check that out. All right, guys. Any final words here? Any wrap up? If anyone is listening to this point, anything that you want to offer the listeners, or anything you do for them?
Just want to say thanks for checking it out, and Mark, obviously, thanks for hosting again. And let's do these more often, and keep informing people. I think the biggest thing with all this is that it changes so often that we could be here. We could do the same exact topic 6 months from now and might have completely different answers. So staying on top of things is probably the number one thing, and I think that's where a good property manager comes in handy, because if you're working your 9 to 5 and all that stuff, having someone that is involved in these villages and at the village halls every day makes a huge difference.
agreed. It can be hard for us to keep up, and we do it full time. So yeah, Mark, thanks for having me, and yeah, had fun. If anybody needs help, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, listeners. So even if you're going at it alone with your own property management, having people like the three of us on here to be able to reach out to, chat, we'll always want to help you as well too. We're always willing to let you hire us as well too. So we all have different coverage areas, so we're all able to help you. So reach out to any of us, and we'll definitely point you in the right direction or be able to help you. So I put a couple downloads in the chat here that have great value and some of the things we talked about here today. And yeah, stay tuned, and we'll see you back here next week on Chicago Landlord Secrets. So thanks, guys, and we'll talk.